We're here. Let's talk basketball.
Welcome on into the AZ Wildcats pregame show live from Studio K, presented by our friends over at Circle K. I am Damon Dog. That's my guy, Kevin Thomas, and we are the AZ Wildcats podcast. We're giving you a pregame show here at PHNX HQ3, and I'm fired up, Kevin, for an Arizona Wildcats ranked opponent in the Big 12. First Big 12 ranked opponent of the season in BYU. Big one. We've had this one circled for quite some time. How are we feeling just about 30 minutes out to tip off?
Man, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great, Damon. These are the games we've been waiting for. February is close, and we know what kind of gauntlet awaits us once February hits. But tonight is really Arizona's first massive challenge in the Big 12, and it's beautiful to see. We had Houston, Texas Tech the other night. Now we have Arizona and BYU in pretty much a standalone spot. The whole country is going to be watching this game to see what undefeated #1 Arizona can do against BYU, AJ Dybantsa, Rob Wright, Kevin Young, and the crazies in Provo in that environment. It's going to be an incredible game, Damon. The matchups are elite. That backcourt of Rob Wright, Richie Saunders versus the backcourt of Braden Burries and Jaden Bradley. The front court, AJ Dybantsa, Koa Pete. Well, or maybe not. That might not be the exact matchup. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But the stars are there. The elite coaches are there. The rankings are there. The records are there. The elite venue is there. This is the game that you want to see tonight. So, yeah, I'm very excited. Except for the fact that Tony Padilla is calling this game, Damon. Damn it.
Is the Three Amigos tequila there, Kevin?
Yeah, the Three Amigos tequila is always here, Damon.
Well, in Arizona, probably not in Provo, though. If we're keeping it a buck.
Yeah, no, it's not there.
As Andrew puts in the chat, real ones are sipping on Ramona's Reserve tonight.
Yeah, always.
That's the type of action we're on. But absolutely massive matchup. You name some of the star power. I mean, it's hard to really get a more star-studded matchup, I think, in a college basketball game where you're talking about like upper echelon players, in a direct matchup with one another, it seems. And honestly, you can't script anything up more than this. But yeah, I mean, you would assume that, this is one that not only have we had circled, but BYU fans have probably had circled for quite some time. If you date back to last season, Arizona won the game in Provo off the back of, I believe, a Tobe Awaka dominating performance, and then ended up losing the game in Tucson off the back of one of the worst foul calls that we've ever seen in modern college basketball history. Now, we could leave that to the side for a second, but Arizona should have been 2-0 last year, but both road teams ended up winning. Could we see something similar tonight despite such a raucous environment?
I think you will see another road team taking a W in this game. Now, that is no discredit to BYU because this is about to be a hell of a showdown between two incredible teams. But I just don't think that BYU possesses the amount of depth that Arizona does. I don't think that they have the front court that Arizona does, and I do not think that when it all comes down to it that they have the back court that Arizona does. But I do think that the road environment is going to be raucous, as you said. I was listening to some BYU podcasts prior to this when we got into the studio, and this genuinely might be the biggest game in that arena's history, right? Like, this might be the craziest environment in that stadium's history, and that is not a diss, but they've had some pretty great times, right? Kawhi versus Jimmer, those times. The Gonzaga games as well. They've had some crazy games at BYU. But I think the #1 team in the nation coming over into your land, trying to do what they got to do to stay undefeated, all of us, this environment's going to be insane. But it's not like this Arizona team's not built for these crazy environments. Night 1 in Vegas, defending national champions. T-Mobile Arena, that's a crazy environment. Not as crazy as this is going to be, but you get what I'm saying. That's a big stage, right? Go to True Road Environment against UConn. Handle business. And I think that is a crazy road environment.
For sure.
You beat Alabama in the state of Alabama in Birmingham. And You're going to tell me that that was an all-Arizona crowd? Absolutely not. This Arizona team is poised. They're ready for that type of environment. Now, I'm not going to, grandstand here in front of you and say that, this is not the craziest environment that they will have faced yet this season. So this is still a big test for them to overcome. But, yeah, I think this is going to be a raucous environment that Arizona does overcome, Damon. I do.
Yeah, I mean, this team is certainly battle-tested. You talk about going to Birmingham. You talk about going to stores. They're going to LA even, and I know that there's a lot of Wildcats fans in that crowd, but that's in UCLA's house essentially. And you go out and you end up with W's in all of those games. I think it'd be unfair to say that this team has shown us any signs of really being rattled necessarily by road environments so far, or at least that it hasn't necessarily been debilitating, right? It hasn't had the effect on the team that is really going to shut this team down. And I think that this is probably going to be the craziest environment you've faced. We've seen how wild BYU fans get, whether it's in our chat, whether it's in our comments after the show, just on regular social media, or even when they're playing like a big time football game, when they're playing Utah in the Holy War at BYU. That was an insane environment at that stadium. And now you talk about basketball, they have played the Gonzagas of the world, but this isn't the West Coast Conference anymore. This is big boy college basketball. This is the Big 12. It's the best conference in the country. And I think it absolutely matters more than any game that they've pretty much played in their program's history. I mean, they're really not a program that is storied with tournament success. They've become a better team in modern history, but even before Jimmer, you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of BYU basketball success. Now they have the tools and the resources to become an upper echelon program for a long time, but I think that it's entirely fair to say that this probably is the biggest environment game that they'll have played at their home stadium in Provo, and we're honored to be your guys' Super Bowl, truly.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's start talking about this game a little bit more in depth, Damon. Arizona traveling to Provo.
Can't even crack a smile from Kevin. I've been pounding the Super Bowl drum a little bit too hard this week.
Look, I love that you're doing that though. I do, because truly this is like you said, the biggest game in their program's history at that home court that they got. So I'm just gonna let you pound the drum, and I don't need to do backup vocals. The drum is doing its own work. You know what I mean?
The thing is though, Kevin, is that you already get out ahead of it. Say they pull something out of their hat, it's a BYU W. I'm like, congrats, fellas, when's the banners ceremony? I'd love to come into town for it. Saul says Allegiant Airlines flights are only $78 round trip.
Corey says Kalaches are great out there. You know what I mean? So maybe I might have to come visit.
I'd love to check it out. I'd love to be there to celebrate such a special moment.
Yeah.
See, this is the things that you got to think about when you're such a troll like me.
It is. But we've already touched on it, right? AJ Dybantsa. He is the absolute star in this matchup, right? The projected number 1 overall pick. As much as we all love Koa Pete, all eyes are going to be on AJ Dybantsa tonight from a national perspective. The man is unbelievable, if we're being completely honest. 23.6 points per game, 6.8 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists on really incredible efficiency. The man can get to his spot literally whenever he wants, from wherever he wants. He's incredibly lanky at his size, underrated strength as well, because you look at him, he's so wiry, you think he can get pushed around and stuff. He's not Tobe Awaka. I'm not trying to say that, but he is pretty strong for his frame as well. And, he is the head of that 3-headed snake, right? He is the lead head on that snake. But backing him up, though, you also have heavy hitters, and we're familiar with these two players. Richie Saunders from last season, man, I don't like seeing his face as much as the next Arizona fan likes seeing Richie Saunders' face. I get bad vibes from last season. That's just the way it is. Almost 20 points a game, though, on 5.3 rebounds, 2.1 assists, and that is almost 40% from 3, Damon, involving some not-so-pretty performances on really good volume. Richie Saunders is an absolute sniper, and Arizona's going to have to prevent him from doing so in this game, as Big 12 Bobby says in the chat. And then the last head of that snake is transfer from Baylor, sophomore Rob Wright III, 18 points a game, 3.8 rebounds, a hell of a clutch shot at the Garden earlier this year, 5.2 assists on damn near 50% from the field. This big 3, Damon, and that's what everyone wants to talk about in this game. BYU's trio. Oh my God, how is Arizona going to stop AJ Dybantsa, Richie Saunders, and BYU? When you really look at this, Arizona has, I'm not going to say as top heavy as a trio because they got the number 1 overall pick, number 2 overall pick on their side. I get that, right?
Yeah.
Koa Pete, he's no slouch. Jaden Bradley, no slouch. And then honestly, if you want to go Burries for that third, if you want to go, I don't know who you want to put in there for that third, but whoever Arizona's top 3 is in your eyes, I think competes with BYU's. They might not compete for a points per game perspective. They don't have to because Arizona has the balance and the depth that BYU does not. And I think if BYU, if they're going to pull off the upset tonight, Damon, those 3 players that I just showed you, they're going to be the story of tonight's game. Right, in my opinion. Do you agree with that assumption?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think someone put up here in the chat, if you wouldn't mind finding it for us, Kevin, somebody said that they account for around 70% of their team's offense. And then Owen Leonard goes, that was from 3DMK. And then Owen Leonard goes on to say, if you stop, one or two of them down, that this thing, might not be close. And I think that that's a fair, kind of assessment of the situation. It's not like, that's easier said than done, right? This is, quite possibly the best trio, I think, in all of college basketball that we're talking about here. You're talking about the number 1 recruit in the country, likely number 1 overall pick, a guy who, in Richie Saunders, who is, one of the peak sharpshooters in the country. And then in Rob Wright, who is almost the class of the transfer portal. The cream of the crop of the entire transfer portal class this past cycle.
Certainly from a price tag perspective.
From a price tag perspective, absolutely. As he's raking in 7 figures right now in Provo. But like I think you look at this trio and you say, wow, they're phenomenal. But can Arizona find a way to just slow one of them down? And I think that would prove to be almost like the Achilles heel of a BYU. Maybe it's a little bit more obvious than an Achilles heel. You know what I mean? And I think that, this is a situation where I could really easily see maybe Jaden Bradley putting in a shift on a Rob Wright tonight and forcing a somewhat inefficient game. I think, at some point, some of these guys are bound to get theirs. There's going to be points that are put up on the board to elite teams that we're talking about here, but got to find a way to slow down at least one of those stars, and I think Arizona stands a good shot.
Yeah, I think they stand a good shot as well. And if we're talking about how you're going to stop those stars, you got to talk about matchups. You already kind of talked about Jaden Bradley on Rob Wright, that backcourt, battle that's going to be going on all night. It's going to be absolute Karchenkov on AJ Dybantsa, by the way, in my opinion, because Koa Pete, right? I think he is an incredible athlete. I think he is incredibly strong. I think he is a good size, matchup for AJ. But I actually think Yvonne is the matchup. And I'm not the only one out there saying this. Saul's saying it. A lot of people out there on social media are saying it, that if they were Tommy Lloyd, which none of us are, right? But we would start Yvonne on AJ because his lateral quickness is there. We know he's a dog on defense. We know he's disruptive on defense. He's very active with his hands without really fouling all that much. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes on that end. And if you can't really stop AJ Dybantsa. But you can maybe try to make it tough for him to get to his spots. Maybe try to frustrate him a little bit. And because that system that Kevin Young runs over there is not going to let AJ fail, right? The system over there is not going to let that offense completely sputter out into nothing. So you can only hope to make it tough for AJ Dybantsa. And I think Ivan Karchenkov is your best way to doing that. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ivan Karchenkov is almost the key to the game, in my opinion, what he does on an AJ Dybantsa. And I think you throw Koa Pete at Dybantsa a little bit. It's not like Karchenkov can play the entire basketball game, but and Koa does match up with AJ from a strength perspective. And, he is fairly laterally quick for his size, but I think that we're talking about a different level of lateral quickness and agility with Karchenkov, right? And AJ's just a guy who wants the ball in his hands. He's going to create a lot of actions, right? And I think Koa is a bit more of a post defender than maybe you want guarding the guy who might be initiating BYU's offense in large part all night long. So that's where I do agree with you. I think Karchenkov is probably the better matchup, and I think he's also just the better defender. Not that Koa is a bad defender. I think Koa holds his own, but he has a bit of a fouling problem, and I do think that you could see Koa pick up some early fouls on Dybantsa in particular, where I want Karchenkov to be on him in the early portions of this game without a question, so that Koa doesn't get made a non-factor, right?
Yeah, 1,000%. And like you said, you can throw Koa Pete at AJ because they're so familiar with one another. They have a good size comparison there as well, and Koa's capable on that end. Arizona is just so switchable, and that is the beautiful part of things. And as we continue to talk about that AJ of it all, Aristodians stand up. because this is a genuine opportunity
Sure.
for Dwayne Aristotle off the bench to come in and guard one of the best players in the country on national television in a standalone spot. And I'm not going to, I'm going to get on my Aristotelian box here for a second and say, shut him down. Come in and shut him down. You know what I mean? This is an opportunity, though, for all your wings to put in a shift, as you said, on AJ Dybantsa and prove your worth on that end of the court, because it's going to be a full 40 minutes that you're going to have to play out there tonight, Damon. And as we're talking about players that are going to need to play their best game, I think Braden Burries tonight, Damon, is going to have a good game. What do you want to see from Braden Burries in this game against BYU?
Man, I mean, I think that, your backcourt almost has to have more production than their backcourt, right? You look at Jaden Bradley plus, Braden Burries versus we're talking about what, Rob Wright. I guess Richie Saunders is technically their shooting guard, but I feel like in this instance he's maybe a little bit more of the three, and they're a three guard lineup. I want to see our point guard and our shooting guard outscore their point guard and their shooting guard, and that's what I'm looking for tonight out of Braden Burries, and he might have to carry a lot of that load, but we all know that once it's closing time that the closer shows up every single time, and that's Jaden Bradley. So if this one's close, I'm loving Jaden Bradley's late game heroics to kind of help push Arizona over the top, but I do think it's. Everybody really needs to play well tonight. I think,
for sure.
Braden Burries absolutely needs to have a good game because he's a guy who takes, possibly the most shots on the team on a night in and a night out basis. And you always need that guy to play well, especially when you're on the road and against a top 15 team in the country. So I think that you need to play somewhat similar to your level that you showed at West Virginia, and you'll be fine in this one because that game was an absolute masterclass from essentially everybody that was on the floor. I don't think Awaka was needed as much as maybe in a conventional game, but it wasn't like as if he was playing poorly. Other than that, everybody was pretty much phenomenal across the board. And I just want to see more of the same when it comes to that. The balance of this team is what makes this team so special. You don't need one guy to go out there and be the star. That's what I think is the big advantage from an Arizona perspective over BYU tonight, is that they need three guys to carry them. And Arizona can attack you in 10 different ways. And that's how Tommy Lloyd built this team, was to not rely on a single individual to, be able to carry you to a victory. Kind of similar to how we needed Caleb Love to put up like 40 points on Duke last year if we were going to win. And he damn near did it. He tried his darndest. But that was how the team was somewhat built. This year, it's not like that. It's so much different.
And I know we have just 12 minutes. Even though it's a delay, we have just 12 minutes until tip-off here in Arizona, BYU, maybe the best game of the year so far, and there's been a lot of them on the table. We have score predictions coming up. We have keys to the game coming up. But let's do our shots fire with our friends over at Three Amigos. And Damon, I know you got something for me spicy for the BYU faithful.
I absolutely do, Kevin. This one is no surprise to anybody. BYU Nation, we're coming. We're ready. And we did not forget that game from last season. I remember all of these bastards, Kevin. I'll just say it. Coming after me on my social media. I'm throwing out, what about this call? What about this call? You don't know basketball. I can't imagine the things that they would be saying if the shoe was on the other foot. I genuinely could not imagine. That foul that was called on Trey Townsend last year against Richie Saunders was a travesty to the sport of basketball. And anyone with eyes could see that. Now it's payback time, Kevin. Now it's payback time in Provo, in their house. And I want to be 2-0. I want to be 2-0 in the Big 12 era in their house. Say, you know what, Provo? That's actually our second home. We call that McHale North.
McHale Northist.
McHale Northist. Provo, Utah. I absolutely love it. It's time to get another W. It's time to own these guys. And BYU, I hope that you guys show up, win or lose, to this post-game show, but I have a feeling that they will.
Shots fired with our friends over at Three Amigos.
Every time I can explain. Every single time.
Damon is the biggest ref guy. If you don't know,
was there
Damon.
Another time other game where I've been like that cost the team the game?
Ironically, I think the BYU
football game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ironically, it happens to be that BYU is putting money in the refs' pockets every single time, and that they get every call. Shocker.
Yes.
I don't know how that works. Speaking of, Tony Padilla on the call again tonight.
Oh, what a segue, because my shots fired is to your dumbass, Tony Padilla. I did not want to see you within the same zip code of this game, and yet here we are, sharing the same marquee matchup. And look, I just don't want to see you involve yourself in this game, Tony Padilla. I would like you to take a chill pill of whatever variety you like to take before this game, and I would like you to just remove yourself from this game egotistically, emotionally. Be like James Bond, just be emotionally detached as you attempt to do your job, right? Tony Padilla, I don't gotta say too much. You're bad at your job, in my opinion. That is how I see it, and I hate that you're on this game. Salud. Hopefully you don't cost us another win.
We love a good shot from our friends at Three Amigos Tequila. We're not sipping on the Ramona's Reserve tonight because Kevin and I, sorry, not just Kevin. That was a little bit, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to throw you under the bus like that.
It's Kevin not throwing me under the bus. I would happily do that.
Kevin and I drink all the Ramona's Reserve, not just Kevin. I promise that he does not have an alcohol problem, but we love our friends at Three Amigos Tequila, the absolute best. We sipping on some Añejo, I believe, today, Kevin. And just nothing like it. Three Amigos, go check it out. You can go buy some at your local Circle K. But yeah, the Valley in Arizona's favorite tequila there. We're always celebrating with Three Amigos. Kevin, should we get into some keys to the game?
Let's do it. My keys to the game for this one, Arizona versus BYU, number 1 versus number 13. Rebounding and physicality. If you're going to beat this BYU team, you have to rebound the ball strong. And by that, I mean get in there, steal possessions, Tobe Awaka on the offensive side of things. Because if you're defending Arizona, once the shot goes up, you are not done defending. Because Arizona will rebound the hell out of the ball, get it back, and force you to defend again, and you will likely be lacking focus and get scored on because you're lacking after that. So you have to defend the full shot clock if you're BYU. And if you're Arizona, you have to dominate the rebounding matchup in this one, in my opinion. And I think they really could. I think that BYU has decent size, and they really do. Keita, Dybantsa, Abdullah. But, man, I think Arizona has more strength and more skill, more importantly, in their front court than BYU. So, first of all, you got to win the rebounding matchup. But then you got to win the physicality matchup, which is kind of what I was referencing right there. Key number 2, stay out of foul trouble. Now, it is going to be tough because I'm saying key number 1 is to maintain physical rebounding, physical defense, especially if you're Ivan Karchenkov. You got to make it tough on AJ Dybantsa, but you cannot get your hand caught in the cookie jar on defense. You cannot pick up frivolous fouls against Richie Saunders. You cannot pick up these, early 2 fouls if you're Koa Pete. You have to stay in the game. If you're Arizona, one way to make sure BYU's trio does not outduel your trio or your 8, whatever you want to call it, is make sure your guys are in the game to play. So stay out of foul trouble. Key number 3, win the backcourt battle. As we discussed earlier in this game, I expect Braden Burries to have a hand in this W. I think he played incredibly against Alabama. He likes the big stage, especially once he has become more accustomed to the college level. I really think he's going to have a good night tonight, especially considering how well he shot it against West Virginia. I think that is a big boost in confidence coming into this game for one Braden Burries. You need a couple of threes, I think, sprinkled in here from Burries. I'll throw Del Orso in this mix as well in terms of just guard slash he's kind of a guard wing, but you get what I'm saying there,
right?
He's
a senior, man. I think you need him to show up tonight and hit a couple threes.
You do. But like in terms of that backcourt battle thing, like I want Burries to show up tonight. We know Bradley's going to show up tonight, but I think that tonight could be a night where Jaden Bradley says, you know what, I'm going for 20 plus because that's what this game dictates. And Braden Burries says, you know what, I'm chipping in 15 on good efficiency with some good rebounding and good passing. But you have to have the better backcourt tonight, in my opinion, because I think Arizona's a given to have the better front court in almost every game that they play. Krivas is too big, too strong, too skilled at this point. Awaka's too damn big, too damn strong, too damn determined. And Koa Pete's one of the most strong, skilled players in the country as a freshman.
I think Dybantsa almost needs to double up Pete tonight, to win this one. I feel like if Koa shows up and gives you 15 plus, it's going to be really difficult for BYU to beat Arizona, because I do agree. I think our center rotation and both of our guards are better than theirs. So when you're thinking about that and you're doing the math in your head, you're like, okay, well, what does that leave BYU? Oh, AJ Dybantsa versus Koa Pete, or Karchenkov versus Richie Saunders. Like, they're going to need, I think those matchups in particular to outscore Arizona by quite a bit.
Now, here's the interesting thing. While we're on the topic of foul trouble here, Damon, who does AJ Dybantsa guard on the other end that doesn't have him potentially in the risk of foul trouble early in this game.
I don't think that's I don't know if that's
because
possible.
That's a real possibility if you're BYU. AJ Dybantsa, I'm not saying he can't guard these guys, but that they're too physical to not foul.
Is he
right?
gonna be fighting in the post with Koa Pete? Because I love that for us from an offensive standpoint. You know what I mean? Let's get their primary shot creator in every defensive action. Just tire him out, because that is a factor of basketball that I think like almost goes a little bit underrated. Of like, if somebody is the primary offensive force, like try to get them tired, try to get their energy levels low playing defense. And I agree with you. I think Koa Pete has a physical advantage over AJ Dybantsa from like a post perspective. And yeah, I'm trying to feed Koa if that's the matchup that BYU is looking for on that end. But it's funny you brought that up because I wanted to expand upon the foul aspect and say that like you get Keita in foul trouble. What does this game look like?
A lot of Abdullah. That's his name, right? I don't want to be mispronouncing his name. But yeah, a lot of that guy.
Abdullah Ahmed?
Yeah, Abdullah Ahmed, yeah. A lot of him, I think.
Out of Cairo, Egypt.
And I think Krivas cooks that G League fraud.
2.8 points per game, 4.5 rebounds. I mean, yeah, like I that doesn't scare me if I'm Tobea Walker or Mo Krivas. And I think getting Keita in foul trouble could be very key early. Yeah. Let's face it, somebody's going to be in foul trouble early. It's a Tony Padilla game. I hope it's them and not us. And I think that there's Keita is definitely one of those guys who could be in some early foul trouble. And I just don't know how much depth BYU has from a front court perspective to really be like sacrificing their starters' minutes for their backup against a rotation of Mo Krivas and Tobea Walker.
We are just 2 minutes to tip off here, Damon, between Arizona and BYU. Let's get to our score predictions, and let's get to our watch-along. I expect to see all 70 of y'all watching this game along with me, along with Damon, and Wildcats intern Cohen on our Arizona Wildcats watch-along. But score predictions here, 88-82 is mine. Damon, you also had an 88-85. I feel like this is going to be an incredibly physical game, but these offenses last year lit it up. In McHale, for example, that game was in the high 80s, low 90s. I think that these two teams, BYU does not have the same defense that Arizona does. I think this is in that mid to high 80s range. Damon, what say you?
I agree with you there, Kevin. I was kind of looking at a similar number there myself. I think Arizona gets the job done in this one. I think it's really close, and I like the Cats to pull this one off by, what did I have, 88-85?
85, yeah. Thriller on Damon's side.
Yeah, I think it goes down to the wire. I really do, and I think both these teams are really good. I think BYU, and I've said this before to you on this show, Kevin, of like outside of Houston, who I think is, they still get to be the boogeyman until Tommy Lloyd beats them for the first time. But outside of Houston, I think BYU is almost uniquely built to give Arizona a tough time because they have such good shot creators. They have as good of a trio as anybody. And Texas Tech is similar, but they only have a duo, right? And I just think that having those elite shot makers is what you need to beat Arizona, and they need an all-time night from those three. Hopefully they don't get it. Hopefully the Wildcats and their depth just comes out on top in this one. Cannot wait to watch it. Again, we are doing a watch-along, so join us for the watch-along. Even BYU fans, we'll invite you guys too. But appreciate everybody for watching this pregame show. Let's run these likes up before we get on out of here. And let's get an Arizona Wildcats W. Hold on to that number one ranking, although if they lose, they shouldn't lose it. But we'll talk about that if we get there on postgame. But before that, let's just win this basketball game. Cannot wait for this one. We've had this one circled for a while. Follow Kevin at KevoPost. Follow me at Damon Dog. Follow us at PHNX_Wildcats on all socials except for TikTok, where we're at AZ Wildcats Pod. And we'll see you on the watch along, and then we'll see you on the postgame. Until then, peace out. Bear down.
And go Cats. Let's beat the Cougs.
We all silly like the mayor.